evening, and thank you for having me here. And I was just listening to the other speakers, and I was wondering, have I chosen the right book? But what I've heard actually reinforces the fact that I'm really going to enjoy talking about this book. So I write fiction. So the tussle was, should I talk about fiction? Definitely not talk about my book, but also pick up a book that has meant a lot to me. So I believed I don't read self-help books, that they have nothing to teach me. Right? You really can't learn by just reading a book. But I've chosen this book because not only have I read it, I've implemented it, I have in some ways forced my family to read it, and hopefully seen them change for the better. And it's been immensely useful in the work I do as a coach, as a facilitator, as somebody who does organizational transformation. So let me start by sharing with you the story of how Carrol came to write this book. So 20 years ago, as a young researcher in the US, she was obsessed with this thing called success and failure, which a lot of us are also obsessed about. And she wanted to find out more than anything else, how did people cope with failure? And she did that in the way that most researchers do, by conducting experiments. And psychologists conduct experiments on people, which I don't know whether that's more dangerous than conducting experiments in a lab, but that's what she did. And they like conducting experiments, firstly, with children. Right? So she got this group of 4 to 5-year-old kids in a little room like this, and she gave them puzzles. And she gave them puzzles, and they all did the puzzles, and she told them, great job, you're smart kids. And then she gave them an option. She asked the children, do you want another puzzle which is at the same level as the earlier puzzle? Or do you want a puzzle that is more tough, that is more difficult? And to her surprise, there were some kids who said, give us the tougher puzzle. A lot of them said, no, we want the same puzzle. Some kids said, give us the harder puzzle. And they seemed to enjoy doing the harder puzzle, even though they were not getting it as easily as they got the first set of puzzles. And she started thinking, what's happening? Right? What's going on? And that is what led her to do her subsequent research. So she left, of course, failure was the theme, but she started looking at mindset. Right? And that's how the book came to be born. 20 years after her work, her students said, why don't you put everything into a book? And she came out with this book called Mindset. And the reason why it connected to me is the work I do involves mindsets. Right? So as a coach, I work with people to see whether they can change their mindset. I do organization transformation work, most of it with a large consulting firm where we go into organizations and help them transform everything. And as we've seen, transformation is not easy. And we always found that giving skills and tools to people was not enough. You had to make a change at a more fundamental level, which is what we call mindset or belief. If that didn't change, all your PowerPoint slides and the wonderful tools are not going to work. And which is why I said, I started doing my own research on mindset, and I came upon this book. So what does the book say about mindset? Right? So Carrol Dweck actually came up with the fact, and the whole research is around the fact that we have two kinds of mindsets. One is what we call the fixed mindset, and the other obviously is the growth mindset. So what is the fixed mindset? It's a fundamental mindset where people believe that their intelligence and abilities are fixed and cannot change. Which means, as we all say, I am who I am, and I cannot change. And all their behavior and the actions comes from this fact that they have to be a certain kind of person and they have no other options. On the other hand, people with the growth mindset, which is this wonderful mindset you see with the flower growing, they believe that their intelligence and abilities are not fixed, they can change, they can learn and grow. And it seems common sense, right? Of course, we all believe we can learn and grow. But common sense is not common practice. So she went deeper and figured out what are some indicators. How can we figure out whether others, more importantly, how can we figure out whether I have a fixed mindset or not? And there are some indications. Right? People with fixed mindset will avoid challenges, like the kids who did not want the tougher puzzle. They will give up easily. They don't believe in putting in effort. In fact, it's very glamorous to say, oh, you know, I didn't put in any effort. And I found a lot of students, and I realized I used to do this as a child, never like to admit that I actually sat up till 5 a.m. studying. Right? I like to say, you know, I didn't do too much, but wow, how wonderful, I got 90% because of my innate intelligence. I must be really smart, and we feel good about it. Ignore feedback, and of course, when we look at others, it's threatening, right? And if you see signs of this in people, chances are they have a fixed mindset. And of course, it was very disturbing as I read the book. I realized there were a lot of occasions where I had demonstrated this. I did have, in many cases, a fixed mindset. Then we look at people who have a growth mindset. Of course, like the other kids who wanted the harder puzzle, they welcome challenges. When they had setbacks, they kept going. They did not give up. They saw effort as a path to mastery. These were probably the few kids who said, yeah, I studied till 5 a.m., but I still didn't make 90%. Maybe I have to go and do something else or study harder. Very rare to find those people, but they are there. Learn from criticism and look at others and find inspirations. So these are some distinctions if we want to figure out how to spot the mindset. Now the next question is, how do we get these mindset? Where do they actually come from? And as usual, in those of you who studied psychology, and I'm not a psychologist, but I study, they'll say, first thing, blame the parents. So if any of you are parents, yes, I'm a parent too, so we have to take the blame. We get the mindsets from what our parents tell us when we were kids, for what we hear from teachers. And I remember myself, I had a teacher when I was much, in grade 3 or 4, and I wasn't very good at maths. And there was a teacher who said, it's okay, you're not good at maths, but you're very good in English, so why don't you focus on that? Since then, I continue to believe I'm not good at math, right? And it's not a belief, I believe it's a fact, I am really not good at math, and that's how a mindset has come in, right? Teachers, parents, coaches, who tell us this is who you are. And ironically, what Carrol says is even praise can be damaging. How you praise your child has an impact on the mindset the child picks up. So if you praise a child saying you're so smart, the child grows up thinking I'm smart and I should never do anything that will make me look foolish or stupid or make me into a failure. So the whole life is about proving I'm so smart, I'm so smart. Right? And we actually see these examples in different fields. In sports, for example, and in the book, Carrol has given a lot of examples from sports. Any of you recognize the gentleman playing tennis? McEnroe, right? So now people don't remember, but I grew up seeing McEnroe and Bjorn Borg. And if you remember McEnroe, you will remember the tantrums, right? Tennis rackets flying across the court. And in his autobiography, in his old age, when he became wiser, McEnroe admitted that he had a massive fear of failure. And he couldn't afford to show it. And it came across as tantrums. There was always this constant pressure that he would fail and he would not be the great natural talent that he was expected to be. On the other hand, you have, you know who this is? Michael Jordan, right? So everybody knows about Michael Jordan, but what I didn't know and what I came to know from this book, that Michael Jordan was rejected by his school basketball team, right? He didn't make it to the college which he wanted to join as a basketball player. He had many setbacks, but still he continued to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and practice, and what Michael Jordan says is, it's not my natural physical fitness, but my mental toughness that has helped me to win. So, and she quotes him as an example of a growth mindset. And from sports, if you look at business, right? These are two books which many of you as book readers and lovers can read. I've read Jack, but I haven't read Iacocca, but some of you might have heard of him. He was a senior leader in Ford Motors. But he was known for this huge ego, and he was kicked out from Ford, and he was very upset, and he said, I will show them. He joined Chrysler. He turned around Chrysler, but his success was short-lived. And apparently when Chrysler was going through a very tough time, he spent $200 million in renovating his personal suite. And he did not want anybody who was more intelligent or capable than him around. So you can see the way he's kind of leaning back is like, I'm the hero, right? To him, he was the hero. On the other hand, you have somebody like Jack Welch, who of course had his own imperfections. But one of the things that made him successful was the growth mindset. He surrounded himself with people who were smarter than him. And what he says in his autobiography is, I can't use the word I. Everything I have accomplished is because of the team. And GE was known for grooming and creating leaders who were more successful. So if you look around, you will spot mindsets everywhere. not just sports and business, but relationships, right? And that's the other chapter where Carrol talks about mindsets in love. And one thing interesting she says is that when we fall in love, we expect our partner to be perfect. We expect love to be natural and easy and everything to be wonderful. But that is not the case. We say we should be accepted for who we are and we should accept our partner for who we are, but that doesn't create growth in the relationship. The actual relationships that work are where partners give each other feedback and push each other to grow, not the ones who keep saying, oh, you're so wonderful, oh, you're so nice. Though that's also required. But that's how mindsets show up across different areas, across different fields. So now we know this, we know where it comes from. The question I had as I neared the end of the book, and many of you might have, is, so what can I do about it? How can I change my mindset? And the first step, she says, is become aware. Of course, you can read the book and become aware. But now we know that there are two kinds of mindsets. It's easy to spot them in others. Most importantly, it's easy to spot them in ourselves, right? And then get feedback. Get feedback from people you trust, and they'll tell you, you are this kind of a person. Carrol also does workshops. She calls them brainology. And that's a great way for you to become aware. And I also want to conclude by sharing with you two examples of how I applied this in my life. So as I read the book, I realized that there are many occasions where I do display a fixed mindset. I'm a facilitator. I do workshops like this. I stand in front of a group of people. And at the end of the workshops, we take feedback. Right? So if any of you have attended programs, you know at the end of it, you have to get this, what we call the smiley sheet. And when I used to look at my feedback, I would always look and see, have I got my 5 on 5? And if I didn't get that, my initial reaction would be, this was a bad group. These people obviously didn't get it, right? And there was some problem with the environment. I would find reasons to, look at everything else if I didn't get my nice 5 on 5. But I realized after a period of time that I was plateauing out. I was not getting anything of value from that feedback. And as a facilitator, I was not really growing. So after I read the book, and I'm also a part of a group where we all do personal transformation together, and I work in the area of personal transformation, and people do give me feedback. So I went and took some feedback from them, and they said, yeah, when we try to tell you something, you get a little defensive. My husband would also agree that when I get feedback, I'm like, no, that's not true. But after this, I have tried to see feedback as growth opportunity. The moment I look at it as growth opportunity, I don't have that initial revulsion about it. So what I do in my workshops now is tell people, please give me feedback, tell me how I can be better, tell me how I can improve myself. And though I love the positive feedback, but I realize the other feedback is really an opportunity for me to grow. So that's a big difference I have seen, making an attempt in that direction. The second was with my daughter. My daughter is now 16. So after I read the book, the first thing I did was give it to her. She was 14 at that time, and I said, read it. I was scared, of course. She'd turn around and say, Mom, you're the reason why I have the fixed mindset. But we took the risk. And she read it, and in fact, she writes a bit as well, and she wrote a blog on it. And at that time, she believed that she was not a sporty kind. Right? She didn't participate in athletics. She's a slim, young, delicate girl who's not very rough and tough. And there was a chance for the school to go on an expedition, a trek to Bhutan. And her initial thought was, I can't do it. I'm not going to Bhutan. I'm not good at trekking. I don't want to do it. Let me choose an easy option. So they have these class trips where they can choose. But she read the book, and then she said, and we had a talk, and she said, why am I not going for this? What do I believe? And I told her, you have a fixed mindset. And she said, I know. Maybe I will go for this. I should try new things. So she did go for the trek to Bhutan. She enjoyed it. Nothing happened to her. And she came back saying that that was one of the best experiences I have ever had. And I'm really glad you forced me to read this book. So even now when we talk, I say, is that fixed mindset? Is that why you're doing this? So that has also been a big change that I've seen. So at the end, I just want to conclude by saying the book is not just about mindset, it's about change. And that's what Carrol Dweck wants to drive. And as a person who works in the area of human potential, I believe everybody has a lot of potential. We all do. And sometimes it's our own mindset, and we are our worst enemies in our achieving that full potential. So if we can shift from a fixed to a more growth mindset, chances are we will be much more happier and successful at work, in our relationships, and with ourselves. So I just want to conclude by going back to what, sorry, it's not moving back to what Carrol said about change, and that's the picture which you saw earlier. She said, change can be tough, but I haven't met a single person who said that it wasn't worth it. Thank you.